everybody. I'm so excited. We have my good friend, Dr. Nathan Unruh, here from Sidecar Overdrive, and he is about to share his words of wisdom when it comes to accounts receivable. It's kind of like this love-hate thing. Like, we need them. They're kind of a pain to deal with. What's too much? What's not enough? I don't know, but he's going to answer the question. So listen, if you've never had the benefit of seeing Dr. Nathan Unruh here before on our webinar series, you have missed out. And I do suggest you go back and watch his previous recordings. You will learn so much. So he is the Chief Experience Officer, also my favorite title of anybody I've ever worked with, at Sidecar, which is an incredibly amazing, wonderfully fun online training system. Is the best way I can describe it. All I know is the first time I ever played with it, the wow factor, it was like fireworks going off. I've never been so excited in my entire life about anything. Training, not necessarily my favorite thing, but when you do it through Sidecar, let me just tell you, it's so much fun. And I talk about it all the time, not just when he's here doing a webinar for us, which I truly appreciate. But seriously, if you are looking for a way to train your staff, to keep them up to date on the most top information that they need to know to be able to do their job, you really need to demo this software. It will blow your mind. Anyway, I'm taking up the time from Nathan, who needs to tell us all about accounts receivable. So Dr. Nathan Unruh, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Chrissy. That's quite the introduction. I mean, you said words of wisdom. Now the pressure's on, huh?
It is.
All right. Well, let's fire away. So accounts receivable. And, you know, as you are all tuning into this conversation today, we always have this little mythical amount or discussion we have of what is acceptable for our AR or our accounts receivable. And I would like to contend right off the bat that as a chiropractor business person, the first question you have to ask is this: why do you have AR in the first place? So many times we go look at accounts receivable and we chase it downstream. Let's move the conversation upstream and ask that question: why do you have AR in the first place? And here's worse yet: are you just writing it off because it's too hard to collect? Now, I think we would all agree that's not good business. Plus, here's the reality: that's your money. There's been not yet a time when we've been working with doctors and doing their audits, and we take a look at their accounts receivable, and there's a lot to be told about their accounts receivable and the money that they're leaving on the table. It drives a lot of doctors to the question of, well, should I outsource my revenue cycle management? Maybe that's the solution. Well, it may be, it may not be. But here's the good news. In a lot of cases, you'll be able to make just a few tweaks to your billing and your collection system that can make a huge difference. And that huge difference means happier patients, more money in your bank account. And you can really improve your overall revenue picture by just making sure you get the things, systems, and procedures right. So I want to start here, though. I want to start with my own story, how this Sidecar thing came even into existence. And as Christy and I were talking before we came online today, you know, so many times that our businesses, you know, really get birthed out of frustration. They get birthed out of a problem that we are having, and then we come up with a solution. Well, that's exactly how Sidecar came to be. And I'll never forget the day. I walk into my office, and I walk into my office manager's room. And in his room are papers scattered, and there's EOBs, and there's claim forms, and there's Excel spreadsheets up on his computer, and him banging away at the keys. And he says, Dr. Unruh, we have a problem. And I said, well, what's the problem? And keep in mind, this was during a time when my business was growing at 20 to 25% every single year. I had multiple offices. I was growing every single year. But the problem also was during this growth, my AR was rising. I remember my team telling me, hey, it's being taken care of. And I trusted that it was. But here's the thing that I kept seeing is that I didn't have as much money as I should have based upon the amount of work that I was doing. And so that created a frustration. And my AR was actually affecting my patient compliance because I had a patient calling in. I was scared to send statements. My fee schedules were a mess. And really my AR became a real reflection that my business model was broken. And it was not going to be sustainable for the future. And it wasn't going to create the life I intended for myself. And so it was creating sleepless nights. It was creating frustration. It was creating, at times, an out of money experience, even with a business that was a multi-million-dollar business. And so again, I go back to that time when I walk into his office and he says, we have a problem. And I said, well, what's the problem? Well, Dr. Unruh, we're not going to be able to make payroll this week. I said, what? I go, what do you mean? And I said, well, just, take it off the line of credit. He goes, the line of credit is maxed. I said, what? Maxed? He says, yeah, it's maxed. In that moment, I felt my throat slip into my heart and then into my stomach. It was a $200,000 line of credit. It was in that moment I went, how did I let my business get to this point? And it was at that point in time, standing in his office, I said, this will never happen again. Because I could blame him, much like I hear a lot of doctors blame their team, but the reality is that was my responsibility. I have abdicated the duties, the financial policies, the procedures, the collection of money to other people, and I had no idea what was happening, and they were not equipped to be able to handle it. So that's what I set out to say. I have to solve this. I have to solve the billing for my multiple offices. I have to shore up the business. And so we created and documented every financial policy and procedure and made the systems system dependent, not people dependent. We developed a billing company because once I solved it for my offices, we said, let's come alongside other doctors and help guide them. Hence the name Sidecar. We came along as their guide to help them with their billing, handle their billing, provide them business development, and the training that Christy so nicely spoke of in my introduction. We also wanted to hire experts. I was tired. Done was the day that I was going to abdicate all of my finances in my billing in my office to a $15 an hour person that I trained, of which I wasn't equipped to do. And then how could I imagine and wonder why that my accounts receivable are out of hand? My bank account didn't have the amount of money in it that I thought it should. And I was working my tail off. We also said, I need reporting. I need the data to make data-driven decisions, not decisions based upon emotion. So we had to create key performance indicators that were telling me how my business was running upstream, why the AR was getting to the point where it was, and how to stay in control of it and stay ahead of it. And by using that data, that was improving the overall patient experience. I also needed to use technology to our advantage. I love my conversation coming into this discussion with Christy, just talking about technology and how it becomes such a crux for so many doctors and their teams. Because there is no such thing as a perfect EHR. And the reality is every EHR has a lot of cool tools. The problem is we only use 30 to 40% of them. Therefore, that limits our efficiency of how we can really make sure that we're staying ahead of our AR. So in the time together, in the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about what's causing your AR. And this whole theme of this presentation is going to be around how to slay the billing dragons. So we're going to make sure that we understand what AR is. And so before we get into the presentation and the meat of this, I want you to understand there's really a number of different types of business models in chiropractic. Number one, there's cash. A true cash practice submits no claims at all. Doesn't even give it to the patient to submit. It's strictly cash. There's insurance dependent. Insurance dependent is that we are going to rely 100% on the insurance to pay our bills, and it's really characterized by higher fees, billing multiple codes, every single service. Really was a more of a practice model that was really popular during the 80s and 90s. So insurance dependent. You're really dependent on insurance. And then there's insurance phobic. Insurance phobic businesses they're scared of insurance altogether. They don't really know where they fall. They're just scared of it. And then there's patient or insurance sensitive. Insurance sensitive is we're going to file your insurance for you, but we're going to have the policies and procedures in place if you have coverage or you don't have coverage. Hence, that's why groups like ChiroHealthUSA are so valuable. So by looking at our AR and why I talked to you about that business model, you can tell what kind of business model you currently have. And that's up to you. Your business model is your choice. But with each one of them, there comes some benefits and advantages and also some consequences. So let's dive into this idea of slaying the billing dragons. And here's the reality, ladies and gentlemen. Dragons, they roast your revenue. They destroy your documentation. They fry your financials. And you know what? Generally, they just mess up a perfectly good day. And again, these dragons aren't the dragons of mythology on HBO. These are beasts. And when I say beasts, they're beasts. They're alive and romping around your office today. They were in mine. They still do in mine today. But we have to slay them. And because if we don't slay them, they're dragging our business down. They're dragging your billing system down. These dragons are what causing your AR to rise and sit there unattended to. And when left unchecked, mark my words, they'll pick your pocket. They'll pick your pocket with inefficiencies and then pick your pocket with confusion and error. And so if you want to rescue your bottom line, slay these dragons and recapture that chiropractic kingdom. And I'm being theatrical with you today with this because I want to drive home this. This is a major problem in successful chiropractic businesses. No matter which level you are, whether you're starting out, been in practice for a while, or you've been around for a long time, there will be points coming out of this conversation you're going to want to take with you. And by the end of the presentation, we're going to give you a guide to be able to answer these questions. Because these dragons are for real. They will drag down your business. We do audits with doctors all the time. And it's amazing what this AR evaluation really reveals. I just did an audit with a doctor here in the last month. And by just making 2 small tweaks, we're able to find $100,000 of increase in business by making no changes to the patient volume and being more patient sensitive. I'm telling you those stories. I could go over and over them of what we need to look at. So one thing I want to do as we dive into more of the presentation is I want you to understand what AR stands for. Now, if I ask you all on this call right now, what does AR stand for? All of you are going to say, well, I know that, Dr. Unruh. You go, I'm not a moron. It stands for accounts receivable. But here's what it really stands for. AR stands for action required. Because if you have AR, and we answer the question of why you tuned into this conversation today, what's an acceptable amount of AR? The answer is 0. In a perfect world, 0 AR would be ideal. But if we are taking insurance, we are processing insurance, we know we live in an insurance-based world. Therefore, what we want is a 90% accuracy. So you can look at your payer base, whether PI, work comp. Those are the ones that are going to be more difficult to have a tendency to show up on AR. And those ones you have to be dealt with differently. But I'm amazed at the number of people's ARs that I see. They're still cash patients, people that are just paying cash, people that are part of ChiroHealthUSA that are still showing up on an AR. I see people that have the group insurance, Medicare. Guys, we have to have policies and procedures to eliminate that AR because, frankly, I believe it's unacceptable. And that comes down to slaying these dragons. So let's dive into dragon number 1. It's the communication dragon. And this is usually where the wheels come off. Today's chiropractic marketplace is a hodgepodge, and I think we'd all agree with it. It's a hodgepodge of insurance coverage and pricing. It's all over the board. But here's what happens. Insufficient communication with patients about their fiscal responsibility creates friction. It leads to unpaid bills and unhappy patients who go elsewhere. Because what ends up happening is we don't get verification done correctly, we don't communicate it to the patient correctly, we don't collect at the time of service correctly, and we end up with a mess. So communication areas in our office really start here. And again, these are the 3 wheels that we talk about at Sidecar that keep the business humming and on track. Number 1, customer fulfillment. That means when they come into your office, how does it smell? How's the people treat people? What's the vibrance like? What's the culture like? If that's wrong, if that's not right, you're gonna have unhappy customers. Number 2, clinical mastery. If patients expect when they come to your office to get good clinical results, that requires you to be a master. And then number 3 wheel is financial accuracy. What we're talking about today. If any 3 of those wheels aren't correct, if any one of those wheels isn't touching the ground, we will lose people, which decreases our ability to have the impact we want in our communities. Where we see the biggest fall off with communication dragon is that we're not communicating to our patients, we're not communicating to our team. So for instance, if a patient is coming to you and on day 1, they don't receive what I call a financial relating of findings. What a financial relating of findings should follow is the doctor's clinical recommendation. Because when a patient comes to see you, ladies and gentlemen, the examination opens the relationship. When you give them your recommendation, that defines the relationship. And when you give them a financial relating of findings, telling them how much it's going to cost, that further defines the relationship. And then every visit after that develops the relationship. And what happens is when we don't follow that simple communication that I just stated there, the wheels come off. For instance, here's an analogy outside of our profession. If Christy goes down there in Mississippi right now and pulls up to the gas pump, fills her car with gas, slides in the credit card, or goes inside and pays for her bill, she leaves, but then 30 days later, that pump sends her a bill for $60. Christy, how would that make you feel?
Oh, I'd be so mad.
Yeah, exactly. But yet that's what we do, Christy, don't we, in our chiropractic offices?
That is so true.
We've become that. We think that if we went to the grocery store and bought a bunch of groceries and then we got a bill later, same thing, we'd be upset. So why do we think in healthcare that we can do it differently? Because it's old procedures. It's practice past, not practice present or practice future. We have the technology available to us today to know what people's benefits are, to communicate those benefits correctly, and to collect at the time of service. That one communication change in your business can be worth this whole conversation we're having today. So slaying this dragon requires you to have a well-trained team. Chrissy spoke to it. That's one thing that we say that, hey, businesses don't grow, people grow. It's our responsibility to put systems and procedures in place to build our team, empower our team to effectively communicate what those important details are on every patient visit. It means that the doctor must understand as well of what to communicate to the team. And a lot of times, doc, I get it. You're a master of your craft. You didn't go to school to learn all these things. And so what do you end up doing? Same thing that I did when I walked into that office manager's office. I abdicated it. I took my eyes off the ball and abdicated. What abdication means is that I give it to somebody else and I don't inspect what I expect. Ooh, it's a bad business practice. Versus delegation is you can delegate it, but you still have the responsibility to inspect what you expect. So, dragon number one, communication dragon. And a reminder, I'm going to give you a guide to help you use this in your office and use this conversation to help guide you as you're working with your team. The next dragon is the feedback dragon. This is the close cousin of the communication dragon. Where there are errors, and there will be, because people are people, there's insurance gains. We all understand insurance companies. We can all whine about it, or we can embrace it and we can play the game differently. Remember, technicians are people that work with us and for us, need proper feedback so they can constantly tighten the screws, constantly improve the systems and procedures. Otherwise, it just keeps happening, and the dragons keep rearing their head and raiding your treasure. And I mean, if you felt like I have felt, because I've felt this way many times, why is my AR not changing? It's because these feedback loops aren't in place, and they're absolutely critical for the success to get your AR at an acceptable level. So, what kind of feedback loops, Dr. Unruh, are you talking about? Emails that your claims went out. Key performance indicator reporting. What are the key performance indicator reports that you need every single month to make data-driven decisions? Do you have those reports? And no, they're not just the reports coming out of your EHR, even though those are examples of it. Your P&L is one of them. Are you looking at that every month? Training reports. How do you know you're training your team on these systems? These are all examples of feedback loops. I'm going to give you an example of one. This is an email I get in my office and all of our billing clients get every single week, twice a week. It's something I look forward to because I know things are happening. It's a feedback loop. What was the total amount of money submitted? How much was that dollar amount? And then more importantly, how many errors were there? And was my billing team able to fix those errors? And so in the case of our clients, we'll fix those errors for them if we have the data to fix them. So boom, I see that twice a week. Now, I'll tell you right now, when we bring on a new client oftentimes, that'll be 15, 20, 30, or 40 errors. And I kid you not. And I'm amazed at the number of doctors that don't know the number of errors that are coming out of their office. That's creating an increase in AR. That's creating the staff member being a tough spot, because some of those you'll never even see because of timely filing, or they just get written off. And it's costing you money. So other examples of feedback loops, again, KPI, a KPI chart, key performance indicator. How am I performing? How am I performing to last month? How am I performing with industry norms? Training reports. How's my team training? What are they training on? P&Ls. What's my profit and loss statement look like? I mean, I used to avoid looking at my profit and loss statement until I found myself into a $200,000 bind because of my line of credit. That never happened again. I paid that $200,000 off 12 months later and said I would never, ever go back there again. Key financials. What do the financials look like? Do I know how to read those financials? It's about you being a good business owner, not just a great doctor. Now, you can do it yourself or you can outsource some of this. So, next dragon. That's enough on that feedback dragon. I think you understand it. Sloppy dragon. This one frustrates me. I just got to tell. This one puts a little burr on my saddle because the reality is this. It's really a lot of unnecessary stuff. And what the sloppy dragon all comes from is poorly trained techs. We call them techs. You may call them staff. Combined with really loose or vague or no systems at all that lead to sloppy work. This is a particularly insidious dragon because here's what happens. It shows up just randomly. You lose money, doctor, every time patient demographics are entered incorrectly. Does it seem like that would be something that would be hard? No, but I'm telling you, it happens a lot, which is going to boggle up your claims, or the insurance information isn't entered at all, or it's entered in the wrong fields. And then you say, well, what happened? And you've abdicated that to Mary or Billy Sue or Sandra or whoever that person is in your office. And again, the sloppy dragon, here's the reality. It's not complicated tasks. They are the details, but success takes place in the details. This sloppy dragon feeds feeds on the details. And ooh, he likes money. He'll eat your money up. Sloppiness, I'm telling you, billing everything under the sun is another example of sloppiness. You don't even know what you're billing, why you're billing, or who you're billing it to. And then we think in today's day and age with technology, we have patients that don't see their EOBs, and then they see their EOB and it's $400, and they're like going, what in the world? The doctor's a crook. They don't understand it because it never gets communicated. The first time they get it communicated to them, because of sloppiness, is on an EOB. Guess what happens? Magically, that patient doesn't show back up in your office, and you're wondering why. And that's why our retention numbers go down the tubes. Guys, times have changed. In today's day and age, we've got to be savvy business people. We can't just rely on clinical competency alone. Another sloppy dragon, not sending statements. And here's the reality with statements. There's three different types of people. There's the doctor who's the doormat, who says, you know what, I'm never going to send a statement to my patients. I'm just going to bill the insurance company whatever they pay, and we'll collect some over the counter, and then we're going to write it off. Then you have the pit bull. Darn it, I'm getting every nickel that's owed to me, and I'm going to bill like I want to, and they better pay me because I'm worth it. I'm a doctor. And then they run the risk of losing people. Or there's the patient-centric. Let's put the processes in play. A fair fee schedule, communicated correctly at the time of service, properly entered into using the technology, using proper fee schedules. Again, I can't tell you how many doctors I look at, their fee schedules are a mess. They're not collecting at the time of service. We just did an audit with another doctor. Again, it made 2 changes to the fee schedule, meant all kinds of extra dollars to them. We changed the flow of how they are handling their statements. Patient retention goes up because now they're in exchange with the patient. So a key performance indicator, patient statements. People say, well, doctor, I don't know how many patient statements should be sent. Well, you think my answer is going to be 0. In an ideal world, everybody would be paid at the time of service. Everything would happen on time. Insurance companies would pay on time. There would be no need for statements. But the reality is that's not the case. I say, though, 90% of the time, we can run a business if we're doing our systems and procedures right. We have the right people handling our billing, where your statements can go down dramatically. Okay, that's enough on the sloppy dragon. We're going to keep rolling here. Your technology dragon. This is one Christy and I had fun with today because we were talking about it. You already heard me speak to it. Whether we like it or not, our billing is dependent on software. How well do you understand how that software works? Probably not as well as you should, because I know I don't and didn't, and it felt much how you feel. And I want to somehow say that the EHR company made me promises that really never came to fruition. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're relying on your EHR company to make you successful and to solve all these problems, it's not going to happen. They all have their pros, they all have their cons. And the reality is, we don't all have the time to take care of all the technology things, to stay up on them. Because the technology dragon keeps claims from going out on time correctly because settings aren't right, or it thwarts your staff's ability to properly input the information. It really puts, I don't know, has anybody else maybe felt this way like I have felt? This feels like there's ghosts in the machine, and somehow I know I put that information right, but somehow it's not kicking out the way that it should, and all of a sudden it shows up on an AR report. So look at your electronic health system. How much training are you doing with that electronic health system? Do you even want to do it? Do you even want to worry about it, or do you want somebody who's an expert to worry about it? Is your business mature that you can have somebody else worry about it so you can worry about the things that you do well? And that's what we go through when we do the audits with doctors, is that depending where's your stage of your business, what is your business model looking at your AR, and like who should be doing your billing, who is doing your billing. Your clearinghouse. Are you just using the cheapest clearinghouse because they're cheap? What kind of reporting are you getting out of your clearinghouse? Ladies and gentlemen, in the technology-driven world today, we've got to use the technology to make data-driven decisions. Otherwise, the technology dragon will also eat your money. Your AR will climb, again, accounts receivable, which really means action required in order to get your AR. All right, we're going to keep rolling through these dragons. I hope you're taking some notes. Again, I'm going to give you a guide with these dragons and some action items coming out of this discussion. The insurance dragon. Ooh, the hated insurance dragon, that fire-breathing dragon. So you look on the screen, this one, I used to just find myself whining, moaning, sucking on my thumb because all these insurance companies, how bad they were, versus taking accountability, taking responsibility, and creating a business model that's going to thrive no matter what happens with insurance. Another reason, again, this is my plug for ChiroHealthUSA, why I love them, because no matter whether a patient has insurance or not, we have a solution called ChiroHealthUSA. So the hated insurance dragon, boy, they get blamed for many things, don't they? And a lot of them, they're true. Insurance games are real, they're true. Changes in software updates, address or payer ID changes, billing guidelines that change, such as coding and charges, third-party processors, because they signed a contract with this person, that signed a contract with that person, which now changed the way you get paid. Am I just the only one that has that problem? Or a change in EOB and remittance information. And all of a sudden, how you're getting the information back. You can't get the information back. Or how about, this is a fun one, requiring documentation utilization reviews. Oh, miserable. Why did they tell us about that in school? In changing authorization requirements. I mean, are you in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4? You guys know what I'm talking about depending where you're practicing. So again, while your head may be spinning with rules and regulation, the insurance dragon slips away with more of your revenue. So here are the top reasons that we look at with our current sidecar billing clients of why we see with dealing with the insurance dragon where AR seems to climb. Number one, incorrect insurance verification. We just don't get the verified insurance verification done right. Number two, primary insurance didn't forward. Creates AR. Number three, insurance never got the claim. The ghost in the machine, right? Or maybe it was a sloppy dragon because we didn't put the information in right. And maybe we don't have the feedback loop because we got the feedback dragon in our office, so we never know what's actually really happening. No pre-authorization dragon. Happens a lot. We get busy doing our thing, taking care of people, never get it pre-authorized, but yet we signed that contract where we said we would. Not collecting at the time of service. Not collecting enough. Unaware of insurance billing guidelines, such as, here's some common one, Blue Cross Blue Shield can't bill a high-level exam with an extra spinal adjustment. United Healthcare will not pay for STEM using a 97014 code. You have to use G0283 GP code. Yeah, I'm going into the trenches, and I hope that just kind of grates like it grates me when I talk about G0283 GP code, like fingernails down a chalkboard. That's the kind of intricacies that we see in the billing world today. And yet we advocate that to the $15 an hour employee. That's not fair. It sets them up for failure. Appropriate modifiers is another one, appropriate diagnosis codes, especially seen with Medicare. And then really this one is the most common, one of the most common, excessive billing of services if they have a capitation plan. So example, you're billing $150 worth of services and they only pay $55. So again, there's lots of different reasons that AR ends up showing up. So if you look at those things, I just ran through those real fast. And again, they're on the tip of my tongue because it happens so often. And these are the things that we're seeing. But think of these details. Think of the details I just went through. And we expect our team at the clinic level to worry about these things when we're paying them $15 an hour or $18 an hour, whatever you're paying them. And they've been trained by us. the person who's not the expert, and we haven't given the resources to support them, such as training resources and guidance and feedback loops. Guys, we can't be surprised and wonder why our AR is in trouble. And again, then, this leads to the next dragon. We've alluded to it a number of times. Christy alluded to it again in my introduction. And that is the training dragon. And the training dragon lives on the leftovers of his fire-breathing brethren. This training dragon will show up when teams aren't trained on standard operating procedures, systems-based billing, and they don't know what the other members are doing. What this ends up leading to is a person-dependent procedures, which are risky at best. Here's what the training dragon looks like. It looks like Mary in your office. It looks like Sandra. It looks like Carol. It looks like, give me the name. We all have them. Every doctor we do an audit with has a Mary, has a Carol, has a Christy. But unfortunately, is those people aren't always, even though they're wonderful human beings, we set them up for failure. Even if they've been with you 20 years. Because if they have been with 20 years, what happens when they leave? Where are your passcodes? Just did a billing audit with another client. We spent more time trying to find codes to get into the carriers, trying to figure those things out. This doctor was absolutely being held hostage by this employee. That's not a good business, ladies and gentlemen. That's not a billing system that's based on systems and procedures. It's based upon a person. And that leaves you at risk. That creates potentially an AR problem. Training your team in multiple functions is the best defense against this horrible dragon. Giving them the resources is the best defense. We know that this position in the chiropractic office is the hardest to train. It's the hardest position to teach. It's the hardest to hire for. That's why we get held hostage. We find one that does a mediocre job, we just hold on to them. So all great training systems have this, okay? Whether you use Sidecar or not, they have this. Number one, they have great content. Great content that's going to teach you how to have a systems-based business and procedures-based business. That's great content. That can be quantified with success metrics. Number two, you got to have repetition. Like Tony Robbins says, repetition is the mother of skill. Number three, it has to be a system that you can practice and role play. Okay? You got to be able to practice and role play with your team. How to do insurance verifications, how to ask patients for money, how to make sure you're doing those things within the EHR system. And lastly, accountability. If you can't track, measure, monitor your training system within your business, it's not a good system. That's why with Sidecar, we are primarily a chiropractic billing company. But because we start seeing under the covers of a lot of offices and seeing numbers, we not only do help do their billing, people ask us to come alongside them to help guide them with business development. Well, inside business development becomes training and how to train your staff, hire, retain, and continue to empower and sharpen the sword, and how to inspect what you expect. All right, we're almost done with the dragons. The next one is the procedure dragon. And again, you just heard me talking about training. Training on procedures and systems is so critical. And most dragons feed off mistakes and misunderstanding of the team members. The procedure dragon flaps its head around in the organization, and that becomes a lot of times the doctor. And it becomes just because of a lack of standard operating procedures. It's person dependent. We're flying by the seat of our pants. We don't support our techs, our financial techs the way that we should. And this includes collecting at the time of service, verifying and inputting insurance benefits, sending out statements, scanning and inputting all authorizations. All of that has to be systematized. And without strictly enforcing these guidelines and these procedures, your techs don't know what to do. It's not their fault. No wonder they run astray. And when this dragon runs astray, the procedure dragon, Oh boy, the dragon loves strays because it'll eat them up, and that eating them up costs you money. And that's why your AR becomes unacceptable. So a good system, and I'm going to run through this real quickly. This is what it looks like. Billing, because here's the thing, billing can be a vexing problem for chiropractors. It keeps you from doing the work you should be doing, the work you want to be doing, which is taking care of patients. That's why you got into this thing in the first place. So it can suck your time away from your family and community when you're spending time on this stuff. You're working more hours than you need to because you don't know where your money is. And it gets more complicated every year. It's not getting easier. So here's I'm going to go through this high level. Number one, you got to have a communication. Communication, whether are you getting real-time feedback loops of emails, key performance indicators and reporting to know what's happening, kind of like the one I've already showed you. Number two, how are you gathering the patient demographics? How are you entering those demographics? Do you have the proper training on that? The financial tech, doing the insurance verification. Who's doing the insurance verification? At Sidecar here, we want to do backup insurance verifications for our clients because we know if we can get it done right in the first place, that's going to ensure more money in their account and it's going to decrease chasing after AR, which is difficult to chase. Number four, the provider has to make sure that the ICD-10, the procedural code, and the documentation is correct to make sure that it's justifying the charges going out. And more importantly, stay out of jail. Number five, your billing tech. Who's submitting the claims? Then once those claims are submitted, the billing tech is then scrubbing those complaints, doing denial management, handling things upstream as much as we can. Then you look back at the financial tech, how we scan the EOBs, looking at the EOBs, the ERAs, getting the insurance from the mail, make sure it's getting posted correctly. Then we're looking at our statements. Where are our gaps? What are our statements telling us? Are statements going up? Are they going down? Why are we creating a statement in the first place? Using statements as a forensic. The number 9 thing is the AR follow-up. And again, what does AR stand for? After today, you no longer will call it accounts receivable. You will call it action required. Action required is the only reason you have AR. And then you have your person who's handling your billing. In our case, for our billing clients, we have our director of billing that does the reporting. So we have data-driven decisions based on a KPI dashboard. And if you look at all of these pieces in every one of our offices, we need a system built like this. Now, some of you say, hey, I'm going to do it myself. No problem. Do it yourself. Make sure you have the resources in order if you feel confident enough to do it yourself. Or maybe your business is in the growth phase. You aren't qualified yet to have an outsourced billing. Some of you, though, will qualify to do outsourced billing. You'll use a company like Sidecar to help do it. And therefore, then you only take care of about 3 or 4 of these bubbles, and then your Sidecar team comes alongside you to take care of the rest. Again, some of you don't know that you even would qualify for that because right now you need to do an audit of what's really happening because a lot of us don't know what we don't know. The same way that I didn't know what I didn't know and what drove us to create this company in the first place to make sure that would never happen again. That leads us to the final dragon, the let's make a deal dragon. I've seen it all. When I do these audits with doctors, I've seen it all. I've seen family plans that I can't even imagine how we dreamt it up. I see fees and policies that are so violations of compliance. I just hope that God OIG doesn't walk through the door. And again, I don't say that to scare you because I don't sell fear. We sell hope and we sell system-based billing and business development. But guys, I'm just going to be real clear with this dragon. Stop it. Stop it. And that's why I also like ChiroHealthUSA in this case. ChiroHealthUSA was designed to make sure we're staying compliant, to make sure that we don't have to do this let's make a deal type of stuff. So it's so important that we're using and understanding in a patient or in an insurance sensitive environment how to make sure that we're using our fees correctly and compliantly. And we're not doing a bunch of this let's make a deal with the dragon. So I've gone through a number of these today, these billing dragons. And in your chat right now, you're going to see a guide, how to slay the dragons of billing to rescue your bottom line. It's a step-by-step guide on understanding the 7 dragons that vex your billing system. It's the information in a document that I've gone through with you today. Take that information, take a step back, look at your system, look at where your problems is, and then I ask you, so again, this is going to be, the download for that is going to be in the chat right now. If you're listening to the recording after this and not listening to this live, it will also be forwarded to you in your email, or you can always go and you can get it from our website at sidecaredge.com. And that will be in the chat as well. And here's the next slide that I want you to think about. There's a lot of people that say, Dr. Unruh, do I need to outsource my billing? And can Sidecar help me? And here's what I tell every doctor. You need to answer 6 questions to help you decide whether or not you are a candidate to outsource your billing. And whether you qualify for Sidecar billing or not, we have solutions for doctors no matter what stage they are in their business. But here's the 6 questions that you have to ask yourself. It just comes down to the one question: is your billing system leaking money? Number 1, are you working with patients and not finding time to work on the business? Did I hit some chords today that these dragons are living in your office? Number 2, are the billing procedures dependent upon one person showing up to work? Number 3, does your office need help with submitting claims, posting insurance payments, and training on billing procedures? Number 4, as a provider, are you updated with reports on how the business is performing? Number 5, are you able to inspect the billing software and own your electronic health records? And number 6, are you confident with your billing software and your billing team to be able to train others? Those are 6 questions. If you answer no to any of those, you could qualify for an outsourced billing resource, or if nothing else, you've got to get resources to train your current team and get yourself up to speed. So to help you make that decision, as part of our relationship with ChiroHealthUSA, Christy and I talked about making the billing risk and opportunities audit. It's a $997 value. By just taking advantage of this, which we're giving to you free as a part of this discussion today, by going through the billing risk and opportunities audit, it's a deep dive into what's going on, what dragons are laying right there in your office. This audit will allow you to start making decisions. Whether you outsource or decide not to outsource, we'll be able to provide you the guidance you need to start making decisions to become a confident business leader. So that's what you can do following this discussion today. Slay these dragons. Take the billing risk and opportunities audit. It's a deep dive of everything going on in your business. We'll get on the phone with you after we go through, qualify you for the audit, grab some numbers, and then walk you through your own personal customized solution. Download also, this will in your chat right now. If you want to just get that, there will be that audit you can take right away and get going on that, and then we can reserve a time for you to jump on the phone to go through that information. So what I want you to do today is, our company, Sidecar, was established by chiropractors for chiropractors, and it's still run by chiropractors. This is still the billing system I use in my office. These are still the dragons that I got to slay each and every day with my team. So in short, we understand your challenges in the shifting sands of reimbursements. We are dragon slayers, and a sharpened sword in a time of need for each and every one of you. And we'd love to come alongside you and guide you to help you make sure that you're slaying these dragons. And so I want you, as I close today, just that $200,000 mistake I made on my line of credit. I could have kept doing the same things I was doing. I could have not taken action and made the changes. But I'm telling you, I made the changes necessary. I paid that line of credit off. I got my systems and procedures in place. And I'm telling you, it created a practice of my dreams, and you can do the same. Christy, that's what I have for you today. Any questions you have or feedback?
I love this this webinar presentation, there's a couple of reasons. But first, mostly because it's talking about the money. And the bottom line is I've never met a chiropractor whose whole heart and soul was not into their business and what they do and the service they provide to their community. But unfortunately, it does require money to keep the doors open and the lights on and to pay the team that helps to support you so that you can treat all of these amazing patients. But I think this is one of those big areas because even though we need that money, nobody wants to have that conversation. Like ever. They never want to have that financial conversation, which is how AR just takes off. And I love how you impressed upon the importance of you've got to have the conversation. It's also the reason why most of your patients are leaving because there are two big fears. One, they don't know enough about chiropractic and they're scared when they come into your office. Number two, they are terrified that they cannot afford it. And when they get that statement in the mail, all you did was solidify their fears. So you got to have that conversation early on and address that. I hate statements, by the way.
I love what you just said, Christy, because you're right. The very first responsibility of every small business is to make a profit. No matter how big our vision is, no matter how big our mission is, no matter our love of taking care of patients, if we don't make a profit, we can't exist.
And do not feel guilty about it.
No, it's fine. It's how the world turns.
That is. It costs you a whole lot of money to make doctor your first name. They need to be paying you. So, you know what? Don't apologize. Don't apologize for how much chiropractic costs because I can promise you that the MD, the DO, none of them are apologizing for their fees. Yeah. You shouldn't be apologizing for yours either.
Agreed.
Charge market value. That's not what today was about.
That's another one we can do. I like it.
I couldn't help it. It was just flying out of my mouth before I could stop.
I like it. I love it.
I had this one question that came in. They actually emailed me this morning, and she was like, I want to go ahead and ask now. I want it to be the first one. I was like, okay. She said, when we have patients being treated from a car accident and they are an in-network provider with the patient's health insurance company, are they were supposed to be billing the health insurance company, which is what their contract says. And kudos to you for reading your contract and knowing that. But they don't know, are they supposed to bill their health insurance, med pay, car insurance? What are we supposed to do? What happens if it was the other driver's fault? I'm super confused.
Great question. And I'd love to have this conversation with the doctor offline. If I don't answer it, I'm going to go real fast and furious at it. It's a question that comes up oftentimes, and we've asked multiple attorneys. We've asked multiple different insurance companies as well. And I believe in a patient-centric environment that you are required to file the patient's insurance if you're in contract with it. So number one, patient gets in a car accident, you want to file to their med pay or their PIP. Once the med pay exhausts, then you would file it to the health insurance. And then after health insurance, then there's the liability piece, which would be the at fault, which that gets picked up in subrogation at the time of settlement, of which then you work alongside the attorney. And again, we can help guide you in how that process looks. Here's what some doctors do. And again, you might be one of those doctors doing this. They says, I'm not required to submit it to the health insurance. And here's my challenge to you. If that same patient walked through the door and they weren't in a car accident, would you take their insurance? You would.
You would.
You would. And you take that copay or that deductible amount and you'd be good with it. But now all of a sudden they're in a car accident and you don't want to have to submit it to their health insurance even after the med pay is exhausted. What that ends up saying is that I'm a greedy doctor and I'm not really in a patient-sensitive environment. And here's what the attorneys have told me. You're just going to find an attorney at some point in time who's getting bored and wants to do a class action lawsuit. And I think the doctor loses all day long.
Well, not only that, they're going to ask you if you actually have to go to court or you're deposed. They're going to ask you about your billing practices for all patients, not just the ones who were in a car accident. Let there be a loophole. Let there be a difference in how you handle something. That's how your fees get cut to like 30% of what you build out at the end of one of these is because all of a sudden they're like, oh, you have a cash fee. Oh, you know how we know? We called your office.
Yep.
Oh, wait a minute. You didn't bill their insurance because you were trying to get more money? Oh, let me tell you how that's going to work.
And they just want to discredit you. That's what they do. That's right.
No discrediting chiropractors.
That's right. With you. Awesome.
Let's see. So I just want to again remind y'all, click those links that Mandy so kindly posted into the chat box. And make sure you take advantage of that. I was so excited about the audit opportunity because I think that most docs, look, I know you're focused on treating your patients, and already documentation is more paperwork than you really want to do. But the reality is you got to know about everything else that's going on. I think one of the things, Mandy was putting so many cool tips into the chat log, and I threw in one, and it said that when it comes to insurance denials or errors, you need to have a meeting and know every single week that we had this many denials and we followed up with this. We had this many errors and they were taken care of. Because I can't tell you how many people that I work with and friends that I know that all of a sudden they're like, I don't understand. I'm seeing more patients than ever before and I'm making less money, and realize that there are all these denials out there that never got followed up on or timely. And it's something as simple as they input a patient's date of birth incorrectly by 1 digit.
It's a big deal. Big deal. Sloppy dragon.
Sloppy dragon. And I love the thing too that you said that about not being dependent on one person, because I think so many docs out there are shackled to employees who are not serving them or their patients well.
That's right.
Because what happens, what's the worst, lesser of the two evils, is keeping them and tolerating that versus not billing out anything at all.
That's right. That's right.
And I am a big proponent of training, cross-training, never being dependent on anybody. It's big. It's big. And you're only, doc, I don't care how great of a adjuster you are. I don't care how much your patients love you. You're only as good as the team that works for you. So you have to constantly be investing in their knowledge and their area of expertise. And don't be afraid that you're spending so much money training them that they're going to leave you and it's going to benefit somebody else. Because my favorite quote from Henry Ford says, the only thing worse than training someone and having them leave is not training them and having them stay. And
amen. I love it. That's right there, a good spot to take that home. I love it.
It is, which is why I'm like, train. You can never invest too much in the people that work for you because it will always come back and pay you back in spades.
I love it. Thank you. Thanks for this time. It was awesome. I appreciate making this available to people. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much.